Beautiful Wednesday. My name is James True, and this is a mic check. And I hope you're doing good. Let's see what I look like. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So we got this going on. Is that gonna be? Yeah, it'll be okay. So I don't have a really good handle on even what I'm gonna talk about today. So you've been warned. I really just want to get back in the habit of going on, even if I'm not prepared, which is not so great for you, but really helps me get in the vibe of live streaming. If you did not know, we've met our threshold to provide a public live stream, and we just did that like a week ago or 2 weeks ago. What is it? 3 weeks ago. And but this happened right as I was releasing a book, and the book, kind of took some time. So it's taken me a little bit longer to ramp up. And this is why I'm streaming right now. So what an intro to a show. Are you captivated now? Are you like, oh my God, this is going to be the most amazing thing ever? It could be. Who knows, right? I never know what I'm going to say In fact, it's kind of a cool thing if you can find a way to do this. I encourage it because it puts you in, it puts your needle in a different place. I grew up in a time where everything was supposed to be prepared, everything was supposed to be polished. There were apparently T's crossed, I's dotted, ducks placed inside of a row, right? Like an Excel sheet. And we're slipping out of that. The world is changing, and we're not where we were before. I want to see if this is. Yeah, that seems to be. Is that? Yeah, I think that's working. Yesterday I did this, and I don't actually know if it was. Okay, yeah, there's 21 of you. Look at you guys are already liking it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So yeah, that's what we're doing. And if I can pull it up, I'll actually see if you guys. Wait. Oh, no, copy. Okay. Yeah. There's Zerla. There's Amel. Bonjour. Ray Graham Hule. Truth Raps. James, where are you? I'm here. So yeah. Welcome to the show. Happy Wednesday. All that other stuff. New book's out. You're probably sick of me talking about it. I've gotten the reviews in. I have 5 reviews in, and almost all of them are 5-star. One is not so happy about the AI voice thing, and so you've been warned. I'm a writer. I'm not. Although I'm an orating right now. I am orating right now. But when I write a book, I'm trying to create a literary work, and at no point in that book writing am I thinking about creating an audio book. And I hope this doesn't sound like an excuse. I just want you to know that these two things are so different. An audio recording and writing a book are two very different mediums. And I never actually considered that I would want to be an orator who records audiobooks. That's never been in my wheelhouse. It's part of why I don't have a lot of audio. None of my books are on audio. I know that hurts me because I think it's cool as fuck that you can listen to a book on audio. So it's like I'm a big fan of that. But it's also not my genre. It's sort of like asking a music theorist to play the cello. They could probably write an entire orchestra, but they still couldn't play cello. It's just a different kind of skill, right? So with that, a few weeks ago, the AI, Amazon said, "Hey, do you want to release these books on let the AI voice read it, like text to speech?" And I've been my own YouTube watching career, right? Just me personally watching YouTube stuff. For example, there's a Audit the Audit, which is just one of many channels that sometimes I watch, and they basically have an AI voice that reads it. It's not like my favorite, but I'm not actually watching that channel so I can have an emotional experience. I'm more just like, I like the legal stuff that they talk about. And so, to me, it's acceptable, but I can get how it may not be. And so, if you're buying my book, I encourage you to buy the printed version, which will come today. Right now, the UPS is sending me my author copies that I can sign for the people that have bought a copy, and you will have that. So I'm really stoked about that. But anyway, all this to say that if you were to buy the literary version, the one that's printed on the page, I'd so much rather be judged by that versus the quality of the AI voice that read my book. It's a bummer that that's part of the... It's not a bummer. It's actually the first stage, if anyone wants to know the path to being a writer and what's involved. But the first stage is you write a book, and that's fuck, that's like that's like its own little universe of hard. I don't consider it hard anymore. I consider it expensive to write a book. I just mean like thermodynamically expensive. When I get about, I hope you guys find this interesting. Good morning, all. Good morning. When you begin to write the book, the quality of the book is directly proportional, in my opinion, to how many calories you can spend on it. Only after you know what it is you're making. All the calories that you spend on a book before you know, if you sit down to write and you don't know what you're writing, and this is this could be kind of a hell, because even when you think you know what you're writing, you actually don't know what you're writing. It requires a very loosey-goosey kind of approach to things, stretching the spirit kind of thing, where you got to like really, really just kind of that, you're a reed blowing in the wind, right? And if your reed's too tight, you're not going to be able to come out with it. So, any kind of art is going to require this looseness, a certain looseness that I don't have in a lot of fields. I don't consider myself a talented artist. There's certain areas that I've tried to squeeze art out in. Just to give an example, cartooning or graphic design, even illustration, I don't really feel like I ever brought the heat in those categories. And so I think that the artist would be a multifaceted creature that's able to bring those categories in each one. And live streaming has all of those categories. Spontaneity, embarrassment, and a little bit of that if you say the wrong thing, stuff like that. Self-worth, feeling what your message should be versus what you think you want to say, all that stuff. It's a lot of stuff like that. So, but the multifaceted nature is, I think, really the Aquarian artist now, is required to look. You can't just paint. You got to sell your paintings. Yeah, I know, but you got to. And you could reject that. I grew up with a lot of people that were trying to call themselves artists by insisting that they would have to never be inside the corporate world. And that's academia. And that's not art. The academia is just a monopoly over fashion of what we're considering, real or true. One of those examples would be the story of Columbus, believe it or not. I've been reading the letters of Columbus that he had prepared to His Majesty to explain the wonderful things that he found on his voyage. And you're seeing through the lies of someone who basically ran the Santa Maria aground, like crashed it into the side of not even a moving object, an island, and ran to shore, lost the Pinta, was pretty sure that the Pinta captain was going to stab him in the back. He was seeking the Pinta with so much fury that could have been, this is not documented, but I'm speculating here, as you know I do, but that could have actually been why the Santa Maria actually ran aground, was that he was so terrified of the captain of the Pinta, what the captain of the Pinta might say or do if he went back to Spain without Columbus. And when you understand how this desperation may have led to Columbus crashing the Santa Maria, his largest boat, his biggest boat, his main boat, into this island, you start to maybe paint a picture about what was actually happening versus what Columbus was telling people was happening. And inside of every single art, inside of every single craft, inside of every single genre of life, you have this truth, and then you have what people are willing to say is the truth. And there is a large majority of the population that do not think that those things are different, right? That they insist that if something's been documented as an official story, it must therefore be true, and all things that follow it, that dispute it, would simply be inaccurately recording what was actually true, if that makes sense. And this is the birth of propaganda. And we noticed a long time ago that, wait a minute, what actually happens means nothing. All you need to know is what the crowd thinks. What does the crowd feel? How is the crowd going to respond? And Christopher Columbus was an artist at this. Dude, just straight up artist at this. Really, really did some amazing work on this. And his book, First Voyage of... Actually, that's not his book. It's a book called First Voyage of Columbus. Has some of these letters inside of them. And if I had a more prepared show today, I'd give you some more slides. I just don't right now because, as I told you at the beginning of the show, it's more about me getting ramped up to this. But when you consider that, so Columbus is basically cruising around, and he's skirting Cuba, and he's noticing something really profound about the natives. First of all, some of the first islands that he hits, people are terrified, and they will run away. He's not finding any big cities. He's reporting on hamlets, little enclaves here and there, and that most of the people were simply terrified and would run away. And Columbus reports, I don't know if this is true or not, but reports that he was welcoming. He was donning gifts and all kinds of things because he was trying to find anyone that would try and communicate with him. Again, this is just his story. This is very important to keep this in mind. And as he progresses, he notices that they finally makes contact. And the moment he makes contact, Columbus reports that these people convey to him that they consider him to be a god. And this is really where the truth and the speculation really get tangled together so much to where, unless you really know how to use your compassion sonar, your ability to interpret someone, you're never going to really know what the true story is. And I don't even think that I necessarily have it, but here's what I think happened. I do think that that's true. I do think that people considered Columbus to be a shimmering god of Malamu, one who carried an intimidating power that seemed to emanate from him. And I believe that this emanation mostly stemmed around Columbus's fashion. The garb, the weaponry, and the armor that Columbus wore was so over the top for the natives that it intimidated them so much that they felt as if this man was a god. And when we understand the definition of God, we can really come back to the Mesoamerican concept of God, which I do not think that we even have a concept of. Okay, so don't even hear this as factual, but I want you to consider that a god in Mesoamerican time was neither good nor bad, neither malevolent or benevolent, but actually was simply powerful, was simply a force. It didn't necessarily have to have a consciousness, even necessarily have a destiny. It was an aspect. A river is a god because it has an aspect of current, of movement, of constant direction, of flux, of power. It holds things. It literally holds fish. It has things inside of it that you can pull out as a native, and those things have magical properties. And when you trace back what consciousness would see that as, the word God is not necessarily accurate. It's simply the closest word that all of us can come up with to describe what they were talking about. Keep in mind that when you're watching archaeology, or when you're listening to archaeologists talk about a long time ago, or even historians, let's say historians instead of archaeologists, Egypt does this the most, but all of them do it. They're always trying to convey an idea that back then everyone was like participating in a ritual, that they were going through the motions of a ritual, and that they were making a lot of superficial noises that meant nothing, but were purely ceremonial. And when you want to know what that really means, you have to look at modern society. And you have to see what would modern society look like to kind of a sort of an elitist academia in 1,000 or 2,000 years from now. And they were looking back at us. And they would find the Coca-Cola logo to be a symbol of worship. That there was a sugar cult called the Coca-Colas, the Cola Wars would be a Wikipedia entry, and the Cola Wars would be a corporate, which would be interpreted as tribe. So it would be two tribal factions, the Pepsicios and the Cocolians, had a brutal fight over territory, and they tried to conquer the entire world. And Coke is the con. Coke is the Coke con. So Coca Con and Coca Pepsi will end up being revered as gods in 1,000 years, and it's not wrong. This is why I discuss the idea of giving witness to anything in the world is a form of worship. That if you were, today I worshiped my water department. I could not get the town to pick up my garbage. I wrote letters. I've made some calls. I finally appealed to, I worshiped this God, and I appealed to the public works manager who drove today, this morning, and confronted me and decided that I was right and took my garbage, placed it in his truck, and apologized and drove away. And that was a ritualistic experience with the con cult of Beach Mountain, of my town, of who I am. And whatever city you live in, whatever enclave you live in, the only thing that's going to be remembered is about 1% of 1% of what is usually going to roughly be in mass culture. So a Coca-Cola sign is going to make it. The treatise of James True is not. And that in 2,000 years, the thing that are going to survive are going to be Quaker State, things like that. And that this will be all we will have to rebuild and reverse engineer the archetypes and try and figure out what the hell's going on. Now, if you can follow this compassionately, I want you to take this idea and I want you to erase what you've seen, and I want you to look at history with just fresh eyes. I don't want you to fall for the trap of saying all of history is a lie, because it's not. This is how mythology is recorded. And it has to go through a compression state. And the compression state, the same thing that happens when you record an MP3, is happening with your history. And the actual bits that are being stored inside the MP3 file really do never even have Janis Joplin. She's not there. That what's there is the ear's impression of what Janis Joplin would be if it was squeezed into a vice and then expanded again later with a drop of water. So it's a dehydrated version of that. At no point could you and I call that factually Janis Joplin, but at no point would that be important, because at no point when Janis Joplin was around was there even that kind of sanctity. What I'm trying to say is that at no point did we even know Janis Joplin when she was here. So to claim that we've lost accuracy after the fact because of time, which I'm doing right now, is a fallacy only in the sense that when you come back to the original moment, you never had it anyway. That's happening right now because you and I don't actually know Joe Biden or Donald Trump. We have no context for who he actually is. The same for Columbus. We have no context for that. Now, Columbus is freaking out because the Pinta is gone. And he's probably hunting for him. And he's hunting for him because he fears mutiny. And the reason why he fears mutiny, in my opinion, is because of what was happening to him before he got to this point where he crashed on the island of Navidad, or the township of Navidad. Christmas Day, of all places, of all days, was the day when Columbus was caught. When the security cameras of history itself caught him with his pants down, and he made up a lie to tell you why he was in that spot. And that lie we have to uninterpret, we have to untwist, and we have to decompress. And that's what I'm trying to tell you, I think probably happened. He's seeing these villages. He's seeing how intimidating him and his men are. And when he's exchanging things with them, he notices right away that if his man gives him one of his men on his ship was to hold out a broken piece of glass and give it to a native, the native would give him gold in return. And not only that, but the native would praise this piece of glass as if it was the most precious thing it had ever seen, even though maybe it hadn't been. Metal was a very viable thing. Obsidian, of course, was their main resource when it came to weaponry and things like that. But certainly, we know for sure that copper, mining, gold itself, the metals, the soft metals in particular, were definitely considered valuable and considered a commodity, although not nearly to the degree as the Spanish would. So I will give them that, but I think something deeper is going on. The lack of clothing that the natives wore was one clue, but more importantly, the biggest clue was that when his ships would parade along the border of these islands, the people would run and hide. And when he notices this, you would have no choice but to realize, I rule this land. I am their God because of this fear. That's really at the base root of what defines what this fear thing is. I want to make sure I'm not muted and you guys are still listening. Is everything okay? Hey, everything sounds good. Okay, so this, as he's assessing the truth of this world, he's blown away. He's heard stories. He knows that he knows this because he's written in his letter. He hasn't found the people with tails yet. The people that have grown tails, he hasn't found them yet. And he is reporting on an island of cannibals where the people have no hair. And this island, I'm going to go on a little sidebar here, so we'll come back to Columbus, but this is an important one. This island is refuted by academia as being a made-up story. And that the story of there being cannibals was considered by academia as a racist thought, and that it could not exist. And this is why I teach you words like antiquarian, this idea of being a historian that simply wants the truth, that doesn't really care who is ashamed of it or who is not ashamed of it. And that the biggest danger that human history faces is our secret desire to cleanse it, to scour it, to revolutionize it with liberal thought. I think it's a healthy exercise, as I've said before, but I think it really fucks up the history. And you need more something like a mythology where the reverence to the precision is more important. And that's why we have mythology, thank goodness. But you see it happening here in the history, because all those stories were dismissed as not true when those stories were very, very, very true. That the time when Columbus was landing was 10 years away from one of the largest human sacrifice ceremonies that we've just ever been able to admit to ourselves. Where basically over a period of 3 or 4 days, as much as 80,000 people could have been sacrificed in one town, in one district. The same people that insist that didn't happen also insisted that there were no cannibals because Columbus was basically a racist, although they don't say calling him a racist, but this is the gist of it. However, I know for a fact that cannibalism was a real thriving culture, and I think it's a good thing. I know that because if you've seen a few of our previous episodes, I've actually gone over the crockware. There are casserole dishes of Mesoamerican serving dishes and platters that are specifically named and made for the holding of body parts because cannibalism itself was a vital part of the economy. And Columbus heard these stories, and he knew that this is how it works. In fact, the second island that he passed on his way in, he was told that the hostile people there were the cannibals, and that they would get into boats and go to other islands and take people back and eat them, and that their characteristic was that they had long hair and that they were called Caribs. And another 100 years, we insisted that there's no way this could be true because the Caribs were in northern Brazil. It's probably whatever country's north of Brazil, okay? But on the northern coast of South America, I'll say that. And that because of that, there's no way that these Caribs could actually make it that far as Cuba. And so this whole idea of this tiny sect of cannibalism has been blown out of proportion because of racism. And that's what we tell ourselves, but it's not true. In fact, just last year, some genetics have come out proving that the Caribs did actually make it as far as Cuba. But even deeper than this is the idea that the way the body was divided up itself was considered a consumer-based economic form of trade. That if a body was thrown off Templo Mayor, or when a body was flung off Templo Mayor, a certain sect of people that were bald, except for a patch of hair that grew out of the top of their head that was very, very long, which was considered taboo in the entire village, that these undertakers would come and take the body, and that they had a very specific way of dividing it up because that body had already been claimed by different families that had something to do with the capture of that sacrifice. So whether it be Tlaloc or whether it be Huitzilopochtli didn't really matter, because the fact is that dead body had value in the village. And one of the things that dead body had value was for eating. It was a source of protein. And the idea that we ate each other has so much shame around it that we're really having trouble trying to admit that this happened. And so we end up being really confused because we're trying to read the lies of Christopher Columbus on top of the racial cleansing of academia, on top of just the fact that thousands of years passed and all we have is a Starbucks logo, and we're like, everyone worshipped fish people. And it would be correct. It would be correct to say that you could argue that we are the culture that worshiped the cacao, or I think that's right? The cocoa beans, the coffee bean, that we were a cult that worshiped that, and that we worshiped Bacchus. You could very much say that you'd be able to look back at the religion or at the Super Bowl and call that a massive worshiping ceremony to Bacchus, just because a lot of people drink beer, right? So only now, I think, do we even have the context to try and look back at ancient societies, simply because we have enough psychological understanding to realize that the lies are really not necessarily just, the lies really don't lead us astray. The lies give us more accuracy because we just look at what is shameful, and now we know what the culture considers a fetish. So it ends up worshiping what it hates. And when you worship what you hate, you give away who you are just as well as if you didn't, right? So Columbus notices. He doesn't use these words, but ultimately, I think what Columbus notices is that the people who he has found feel worthless. That this is a culture that doesn't have enough calories to associate into its own land. One of the things that would have changed the relationship with Columbus and the people that he met instantly, in my opinion, would have been more intimidation, simply when he would skirt the shores of their island. That people coming out and showing intimidation to Columbus would have been an epidermis around those natives that would have been seen as, not just by them shaking the fist, but they would have been wearing more clothing. They would have been wearing more clothing, because I want you to start to think about that the chest plates, the cod pieces, believe it or not, which is an important piece of armor, the neck guards, and the big hats are simply objects that are orbiting your psychological field. And when they're orbiting the psychological field, you would have no choice but to feel adorned by them. When you, this is a simple copper bracelet that someone gave me a long time ago. And when I notice, this is kind of embarrassing. When I notice that my self-esteem needs to be higher for something I'm getting ready to do, I've noticed that I adorn myself. I place this on me. Chicks probably understand this, and they're like, why are you talking about this like it's elementary? I'm telling you because I think guys find this really elementary. I adorn myself because it psychologically changes me. It would make me more desirable. That would be one of many words. But if you think about Columbus, the word isn't really desirable. It would make you more worthful. It would make you more powerful. These are all the same word, aren't they? I'm talking about pronically, they're all the same word. When you remove the bastions of equality and society and everything else, all you're really left with is intimidation. So you're in the woods and you see the bear and suddenly you realize, holy fuck, I have no rational power over this bear. Oh my God, I'm in a different realm here. And the rational power is really just a sort of a monogamy we give with the palisade, with the fort itself. So even the rational power is kind of a myth. I'm not saying that logically you cannot intimidate someone, because you especially can, especially now in today's world. But when it comes to a native, you're not going to be able to use paper to intimidate. There's a white belt ignorance that comes in not knowing Scripture, not knowing what the words would say. Gives you a little bit, not much, but a little bit of a defense. It's easy to overcome, as we see. Ignorance is no excuse for the law, claims the law, right? And this is why it wins. So Columbus is watching people that do not have what it takes to measure up to his own posture. And horrible things happen as a result. Horrible things. We don't know exactly what happened. And I know for sure that I am not qualified to give you a complete historical run-up of what Columbus was going through. I encourage you to do that elsewhere. If the live stream stays, and I think it will, I'm so happy with the support we have. You will see more of this, right, as I ramp up. But with the book, I hope you understand. Columbus's men started to notice, this is my opinion, that Spain was no longer a place that made sense for them to go back to. It made no sense because the man who traded the piece of glass for a lump of gold is now in a completely different category. He just won the lottery. And that the amount of mutiny that would have had, I think it would have had to have taken place, my friends. I do not think it would have been possible not to. And I believe that this really was not a successful venture for Columbus at all. Columbus has this story that he's telling His Majesty about how he conquered this land and how everyone worships him as a god, but he magnanimously told them, no, it's my Majesty you must worship. And that he found it to be so successful that he decided to leave the Santa Maria there, and that they would use the wood from the Santa Maria to build a fort, because that fort would be the home of the king's new gold mining operation. And so the story that Columbus was bringing back was not a story of disaster. It was a story of strategic thinking and cunning expertise as someone who knew what it was like to navigate inside the court, inside the Majesty's court. We've talked a little bit about different people that have been brought back from the wild, that are asked to live in society again, and that they fail because they cannot handle how cunning and evil people are. It's the same kind of thing. The amount of lies that are required for you to exist in public is just, it's outrageous. It really is. And when I'm saying lies, I'm talking about all kinds of chronic lies, like if you're going to wear deodorant. I encourage, if you want to wear deodorant, great. I personally don't, unless I'm in a situation where I feel like I might hurt someone's feelings. So I will then. So I'm not even trying to say, here's my, but it's like, even the clothing that we wear, the grooming that we do is sort of a kind of a lie. But you know, I've been telling you that lies are not what we think they are anyway. So this has got to be a little bit tricky to hear me say this, especially if you're new. Columbus lost all control over his men because every one of those men became a king the second they jumped out of the boat. And all they had to do was get back. Now, if you look back at the history of what a boat really is, a ship, it really is a living country to itself. Even the captain himself is not necessarily in charge. He's trying to stay in charge. He uses all of his politics, intimidations, promises, and just sheer brunt force to stay in charge. And a good captain is going to be probably a pretty brutal dude just to even survive that. And so I give my hats off to Columbus, thinking that he's probably really, really gifted because he made it through history. He's one of the many Coca-Cola signs that just survived, weathered so well that we know his name, that we were able to use this excuse of, well, no, it's not that there weren't people there. No, we discovered America. America wasn't there until we got there. And that all these cultures and all these things that existed weren't actually real, but they were. Not only were they real, but they were so untenable that it gave us the excuse to just genocide the whole fucking place, which is why you can't actually go to Templo Mayor right now because there's a giant Catholic church on top of it. And that Catholic church was only built on top of it after that Templo Mayor was leveled brick by brick, right? But maybe a 7-story, prove my lips, I don't know if that's how tall it is, but I'm guessing maybe a 7-story structure. Eliminated brick by brick by brick, completely leveled to the ground, so you can build a monastery on top of it. This is the story of Mexico City. So it tells you that what we saw had to be so untenable that we had to bury it, that we had to dismiss it. And I think that what we saw is not necessarily the horrors of Mesoamerica. It was probably the horrors of what we did. Columbus actually mentioned that he felt very uncomfortable when he noticed how his men were able to take rusted pieces of cannon fodder, of chain, the barrel rings around a barrel was pulled off a barrel, and that was given in exchange for like a shitload of gold. And so why would you stay on that ship? You've been impressed on that ship, maybe epigenetically. What do I mean by that? Your grandfather was clubbed over the head and you were thrown a ship, and he convinced himself he wanted to be there because there's the only way he could deal with the trauma. So now he's a hardy sea captain or a hardy sea sailor. And so his son becomes a sailor. He's just living in the same trauma. He doesn't even know, right, that this was even done to him. But now these same people are now noticing, okay, so villages are screaming to call me God. They will give me anything that I ask for. That you go into the village according to Columbus, and you don't even ask for things. They are taking their most precious objects and giving them to you. And I want you to ask yourself, what is that behavior? We live in a society where we would call this nice. Well, James, because they were really nice. The Mesoamericans, the only reason why we did that, assuming that all this story is true, because I realize there's a lot of twines here, but the only reason why they did that, James, is because they're really nice. And I'm saying, I don't think that's it. I think that we have this psychopathy that just is required for us to live in society when we shut our noses off. And really, I think that behavior would be when a dog shows its belly. If you walk up to a dog that doesn't know you, and that dog starts to roll over on its belly, roll over on its back, and it's exposing its belly to you, and it's wagging its tail, and it's turning its head to the side to kind of give you access to its neck, you're going to say, oh my God, that dog is so in love with me. That dog cares about me. That dog clearly considers that I am a god. All these things are things that you could easily think were the case until you understood dog psychology enough, and then you might be able to see through the facade. And keep in mind, one of the facades that you have to see past is that you are not a god now to this dog, i.e. this native. Because when they are looking at you, they're not doing it because they love you. They're not doing it because they praise you. They're doing it because they're fucking terrified and they don't know what else to do except for to show you, I am vulnerable to you. I give you all. I pose no threat. Please allow me to survive. That's what they're saying. And you and I live in a society where we interpret that as nice. And I get in trouble for this. People declare that I must be evil because I'm saying don't be nice. And I'm saying don't be fucking nice because that is what we call nice. And when you roll over and you show that kind of a thing, and the dog is wagging its tail, right? Because he's trying to deny your ability to judge him as hiding. The dog is showing you his tail because he wants that. We raise our hands to show the same thing. This would be nice. Oh, look how nice that man is. He raised his hands. He raised his hands and placed them behind his head, which clearly is a gesture of how much he loves me and considers me a god. It's the same thing. This is all the same thing, especially when you're looking at a time when these kinds of energies, the colors between them were kind of blurred, right? I've been slowly trying to talk you guys into considering that blue is a new color, something that we invented. And that out of this same thing, I want you to look at how emotions do the same thing, that there's a time when the emotions have the same hue when you're an elementary when you have an elementary eye to determine it. A child is not really able to fully appreciate the tertiary colors, the secondary colors, until enough time is developed. And that time just gives him a higher resolution to where he hallucinates these hues. It's fascinating. And so our psychology would be the same. These people were so completely outgunned because they refused to accept a society where Cain was allowed. The idea of Cain in the Bible, right? Cain stones Abel. And that we call Cain evil because he committed evil, although I think if we look at what happened, I think Cain was framed. I know we say Eve was framed, but I think Cain was framed. I think an all-powerful God denying Cain's natural gifts as a farmer, and Cain gave his sacrifice to the Lord, and the Lord said, meh. It was the first meh ever uttered by God. And that hurt so much that Cain, having poor reactionary skills, did the exact same thing Abel would do. But Abel didn't give the opportunity to do that because Abel was praised by God, right? So Abel was praised, Cain was rebuked, and this caused this happen. And who's still alive today? It's not Abel, it's Cain. And we like to argue that Cain is the evil one, but Cain is the one that saw trauma first. Abel saw praise first. Cain saw trauma first. And you are looking with Tico, this concept of this white evilness, which I don't even mind us calling it that just to explain it. Because when you look at the European movement into America, everyone dies. We call it smallpox. We call it all kinds of words. I don't even mind you calling it that because those are going to manifest in different ways, right? Leprosy is a manifestation of the lack of self-worth. If you never bathe your skin, you have a much higher chance of developing something that looks like leprosy. And the moment that people start to feel sorry for you, if you have lepers, you now have a welfare program where the same people that are like, yeah, I would work, but then I'll lose my welfare. And that they want us to treat them like regular people too. But they found a pocket, an eddy. And really, this is fine. I think all of us are going to need these pockets at different places. I think I have my own pocket too. All of us do. This is the shape of our flower, really. But as the incongruence between Columbus's stature and the native stature causes these two people to regulate. They regulate. And when they regulate, the ones on the bottom die. They fucking die. And the ones on top, they don't do so well either. The amount of corruption that they see where all I have to do is jump off this boat and I can have literally anything I want from these people was simply too captivating to turn down, which is probably why there was this issue where the Pinta was trying to get away. We don't know what happened. We only know what Columbus told His Majesty happened. And he told His Majesty that he didn't use these words, but he told His Majesty that because of the potential was so great that he grounded a ship on purpose and he left the 35 people there. And he left them there because they didn't have a fucking boat. There was no more room. That's why it's only 35. He left them there and he told His Majesty, I'm leaving them there because they're going to start the new mine and everything's going to be great. And you know what? Columbus returned to Navidad the next year and everybody was dead. And he asked the natives, what happened to my men? He's like, oh, we had to kill your men. Well, what do you mean? Why'd you kill our men? Dude, your men are fucking psychos. They started doing this and demanding this and doing this. Then they took this, then they took this. And then look, we're being as nice as we can, but fuck you guys. So yeah, we had to kill him. He's like, well, whose idea was it? It was like, and they picked their sacrifice. The island of Haiti decided that they needed to give someone away to Columbus and say, he's the man that did it. You know what? They picked their most powerful dude, and they said he did it. Caonabo. 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 I do not know how to pronounce it. I just found this guy. They picked him. And this is why I told you earlier, I'm not a historian, so don't look at me that way. They picked him and they said, you are going to be the one that falls for this. You are. And he did. Columbus went to him and he said, I have a gift for you. We don't know if this is a true story, but let's say it is. It was recorded as a true story, okay? That Columbus has a gift for you. And he meets with him the same way Conoticarius, the same way George Washington met with the Powhatan. Columbus met with the Haitians, and he said, I had a gift for you. And he comes, he's like, what is this gift? And he says, these bracelets are revered. Our king wears these bracelets. And the shiny chain that connects them is symbolic of his ties to the people. And Caonabo says okay, and he gives him his hands and he puts the bracelets on, and now he's in chains. And the psychology of that, I think, would be no different than if you were to simply take a piece of yarn and place it around a horse's neck, and with this piece of yarn walk the horse anywhere you want it to go. That horse is 8 times heavier than you are. It's taller than you are. It has more fists, right? It can punch you more. It has more kicking power. Yet it's completely subdued by a piece of yarn. And when you look at this, I think this probably paints the picture more about what cannibalism is really like. It's not necessarily a place where things are evil. It's a place where people are learning their self-worth, but they've lived in a land of Abel, and they're trying to compete with a land of Cain. Europe is really a melting pot of some of the worst psychological trauma you could ever have. If it wasn't all the bullshit that was happening in Rome, you've got the Druids wandering through the forest, literally just high on mushrooms, just raping whoever they wanted to, sacrificing whoever they wanted to. I know some of you are like, we love the Druids. Fine, you can keep loving the Druids, but they fucking did a lot of this stuff. They did. And you end up with a city like London that just has too many people, and they're just like, man, we can't just kill them. Let's put them on a boat and let's just drop them off somewhere. And they're going to die, but if we drop off enough people, we're going to end up with a fort. And that's what Columbus did. So even Columbus is having the exact same experience of cannibalism. It's just a little bit more sophisticated. He decides to leave 36 people. Columbus has to know what's going to happen. He's already documented how ashamed he is that his men are taking such advantage of these people. This had nothing to do with securing any rights at all. This had something more to do with securing his ability to tell a story to the king and still win favor. And this really is at the heart of what it requires to make it through history, right? Yeah. Fear is malamu. Fear is polutu, whatever we pronounce this. We covered this on the last stream, which I'll have more graphics coming, but this shimmeringness. And the shimmeringness was white. Here's what's so fascinating. All of Mesoamerica, all of them, I don't care who you are, have this image of one day this spirit will return and it will be dressed in white. And a lot of them call it Quetzalcoatl. But that the spirit will return and it's dawned in white. And that the reason why it's dawned in white is precisely because the eyes are interpreting movement as brightness. White and bright, shimmering, and power and intimidation are all rendered in the retina in the same way. And that I would argue, and I'm looking for this right now, I think I'm going to find it. I bet you I'm going to find this passage. And I know I'm going to find it not because I'm relying purely on my intuitive spirit. It's because I've actually heard these Mesoamerican myths about Quetzalcoatl being this figure in white. And I think the reason why he's a figure in the white is because of how intimidating he is, how terrifying he is. There is something profound about melanin. There is something profound about its lack. And from albino to white guy to racism to all of our ancient stories about Kemet and the land of the black, there is something going on here. And I think it more has to do with the brain's ability to perceive energy, and that this perception ends up developing colors that actually aren't there. And I understand how difficult this cosmology is, because some of you are probably still stuck on the idea, well, James, how the fuck does a camera work then? How the fuck does that work? And I'm telling you that every single person that looks at a picture is not actually seeing that image. A Heidelberg press has a resolution maybe of 450 dpi. And with a loop, you can zoom in and look in every single piece of literature that your parents have seen. I'm going to say now, because now we have a whole different world of printing, but that most everything that you've read or seen ever is not actually all the colors. It's a mixture of cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And that's only because there's a medium below it of white. And that then when we go to the CRT screen, you're looking at a red, green, and blue, because it's on a platform of black. So you've got additive and a subjective and subtractive coloring. but both are rendering the same view for you. And this is the closest analogy I can get to explaining to you probably how our world works. That when we're looking at photographs, we're looking at the recorded sentiment that our neurons place inside the opsin chain that fires in the rods and cones in your eyes that says, I need something to call this, and we culturally decide, let's go with yellow. It's yellow. Yellow? Yes, yellow. This is interesting. So it's yellow. Yes, yellow. And if we say this enough over and over and over and over again, we end up cementing our fantasy into solidity. And I feel certainly convinced that there were times when early man could not see through the water, the same way that with a polarizing filter you can suddenly see what's underneath the surface. That when the polarizer is the wrong way, the water surface is shiny and you can't see through it, and you turn it 90 degrees and you can see through it. And that psychologically we do the same thing. We learn to hallucinate through the atmosphere the same way we learn to hallucinate through the water, and that through this perception we're able to penetrate solid objects, which we do anyway. We already do this. The thing that's slowing us down the most is insisting the same way that people would insist that every color is expressed in that color brochure, and I show you a loop and I show you, no, it's not. This is a yellow dot. This is a cyan dot. This is a magenta dot. Only then, and only after a lot of practice being in the printing industry, would you even believe me when I tell you there's no such thing as pink here, right? This movement is taking you out of clinging to the side of the pool of objective reality. It's stepping you back into this world of vibration, frankly. Of vibration and congruence with symbiosis, that the symbiotic definition of something has so much more power over your perception than your own personal belief, which is why we struggle so much to find ourselves in this world. Yes, Quetzal would be fast as fuck. He would. So, yes, they would all be different yellows, Nico. All these things you guys are nailing it. All these things are exactly right. And this is where I want you to consider going, because this color is intimidation. The red fast car gives you the intimidation that it's fast. I said it myself, red fast car. The red car gives you the intimidation of a certain kind of a speed. We'll cover a lot more of this, especially if people stay on Patreon. Thank you so much for joining Patreon. Really, really excited that we have enough to do this now, and I look forward to bringing more. I'm doing a podcast today with Primal Hacker. Really excited about that. I'll be sending you some notes on that, and we'll be doing more as we go forward. So appreciate you all. Thanks for being here. I'm going to sign out for now, and yeah, thanks for playing. Oh, if you want to check out my new store, forgive me, I need to do this. I just opened a new store. I opened a Shopify store, and yeah, so you can get all of that stuff now from there. In fact, I have a few more signed copies in this batch that's coming today. So if you want to sign copy my brand new book called The Black Eye Club, please click on that link and check it out. It'd be great. Thank you, Amel. Thank you for being here. And thank you for allowing me to ramp up slowly. I hope it's okay. I hope you guys have a wonderful, beautiful Wednesday. Enjoy this spring. I'm so happy spring's here. It's so great to feel this energy. So I look forward to bringing you a lot more cool stuff. Let me know in the comments if you have any thoughts or feedback on the things we talked about. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Let's play this out. Have a great day.